Douglas. Douglas, are you going to tell people about books? What's your favorite novel? Probably something about how to kill your employer. Something like that. Seems very Douglas.
Well, hello. My name is Tristan. This is L-Space Books. Welcome if you're new. Welcome if you're returning. I have some bookish updates for you. Today is Friday, the beautiful Friday here in Boston area, and well, actually, it is Boston proper. I should be honest. I have had a pretty awesome reading week, to be honest. I finished something that has been on my plate the entire month, and that has been Les Mis Volume 2 in French. Cool, I'm holding it correctly. I saw it inside and it looked like the text was upside down, and I was like, wow, we're starting this off rather rough. But anyway, so the first volume was 485 pages. This one was 560. So this one took me a lot longer. I started pretty close to March 1st, and it took me until March 26th to finish. Reading between, like 30 and 60 pages a day, it was just slow going. And also I found that at least the first bit of this one was rather slow. I think that this one starts to delve a lot more into the political and social upheaval that is going on in the time that this is taking place. So, and as is standard procedure here, the cats are starting to play again. Maybe we will actually get some shots of them running around here, but we'll see. But anyway, so the beginning of this book was a lot harder to get into, and I thought that some of the digressions that Hugo goes on were a little harder to, I guess, engage with. But as it kept going, and the more we started to get into Marius and Cosette and their whole budding romance and relationship, things started to get a lot more exciting. And like by the time I hit probably page 470, I was enthralled, and it was hard to tear me away from this. So, I didn't enjoy it as much as I did the first volume, but I very much enjoyed the ending of this one, and the whole section with the Thénardier family is just very entertaining. And I also didn't know, there's a lot of connections that are, I guess, left out of the film, at least the musical. It's been a long time since I've seen the film adaptation with Bill Nighy playing Javert, but the Hugh Jackman musical, there's a lot of little details that are left out that they're all things that are being tied together, which kind of make it a more cohesive, I guess, more like engaging. Well, not necessarily. I think that just there's a lot more narrative tension because of certain connections between characters that some of the film adaptations leave out. But that being said, I'm still very much enjoying this. I think that this one in particular has had a lot of really fascinating lines that I have underlined and made sure to keep note of. And I'll definitely share some of those once I cross-reference them with my English translation of it, so that I can actually share them with a wider audience. But one of the ones that really stuck out to me was there's a character who, he's a rich man that does charity work, and the way he goes about that is by giving scraps of his dinner or expired banknotes or things like that to people. And what's important to him is that he feels like he has given something. And what Hugo does in the narration is says that he has unwittingly found the path to hell while pursuing the road to paradise. And that's just such a wonderful line, and it's just such a powerful image too. And that's these books, these volumes, the whole novel of Les Mis is just full of things like that. And so I really, really love everything about this. And I think it would be really cool also to teach a class on the 19th century and use this as the textbook. And because there's like so much that you could dive into, you could do your own digressions as a teacher and kind of talk about various upheavals that are going on, because this doesn't just, obviously this takes place primarily in France, but Hugo talks a lot about things going on in Germany and in Russia, or I guess at least makes mention of them, and things in England. Obviously, Hugo is talking a lot about how France is still like the light of the world, that the light that is guiding the world into a new, better age and whatnot. So that would also be very interesting to dive into and kind of talk about why it makes sense that Hugo's perception is that way, but with France's colonial activities, that might not be the most accurate representation of what is really going on. But anyway, lots of cool things. Very, very good. Very, very fun. Love also that I finished it, because it was just such a long project, and I'm glad that that one is done. I probably won't get to the next one until May, probably. I have no idea, actually. We'll see. Okay. So as I was saying, that my in-person book club is reading The Freedom Writer's Diary, which is a collection of journal entries, diary entries from the students in Aaron Gruel's class between 1995 and 1998, I believe. And when I was going into this, I was apprehensive because I was worried that it was going to be primarily Aaron Gruel's, like, her diary entries and her sort of framing the activities that she's doing, and like talking more about like, oh, I'm helping these kids so much, and I was really apprehensive that it was going to feel very white saviory. But that has not been the case at all. What it actually is more of the actual accounts from the students in her class, and they range a very wide variety, like a wide spectrum of experiences. So people who have experienced homelessness, people who struggle with obesity, people who have considered suicide, people who are from a privileged background, but because of their learning disability have been kind of cast aside and treated as a reject. And all of these, what the other faculty in this school have dubbed as the rejects, they've all sort of landed in Aaron Gruel's class, and this is just the story of how she inspires them to engage with literature and engage with writing, to find their voice, to then advocate for themselves and for each other and for their world. And what I think this is most powerfully a testament to is the scaffolding idea that is in education. So as I'm also a teacher, and so what you want to do is you want to provide the scaffolding that can support the construction of your students' worldview. And so you don't actually want to do any of the building. You just want to set up the materials and give them the ability to use that scaffolding to then build their knowledge, their perspective, their wisdom by themselves. And I think this is a really strong testament to how that is done, and how successfully Aaron Gruel did that. And I, as an aspiring English teacher as well, I would love to teach high school English. My background is in French, so you can see where some schools are probably not exactly the most, I guess, open to considering me. But nevertheless, this just kind of renews my desire to engage with students with literature. Like if I have to do that through an AP French class, then sure. I am just totally and completely enthralled with this book. I've devoured it so far. I think I started it maybe 2 days ago, and I'm 150 pages in. So it's one that's really capturing my interest, and it is another one that's hard to put down. And as I'm like, I can't read it at night because it will keep me awake. So it's been actually a pretty transformative book as well, and I'm really happy that we selected this for our book club pick, because I don't think I would have necessarily thought to read this. And actually, I don't even know if I remembered that it was a book. I think I knew that very distantly, but I watched the film, not the PBS documentary, the public television documentary, Freedom Riders: Stories from the Heart. I have not watched that, but I've definitely watched the film. Yeah, it's really been a pretty powerful book, to be honest. There have been a couple instances of the idea that was very popular in the 90s of colorblindness, but those are ones that are like, there are certain students that have those ideas that perhaps there's somebody from a Latinx background and they're friends with somebody who is black, and they talk about, well, I don't see color with my friend or whatever. And I think what they're trying to do in this book, while that is the example of colorblindness, not acknowledging and respecting culture and the backgrounds that we come from, they're not wanting to stick to the labels that are put on them, because for them, the color that they are from is very indicative of segregation. It is what is used to separate them, and they very actively engage in their own segregation too. And so this is their employment of the idea of colorblindness is through the lens of trying to cast off these labels so that they can unite as a human being, a human society. And I think from that standpoint, they feel, at least in what they're saying in this book, and I'm not saying that this is the golden rule or what should be practiced, but they seem to feel like they need to cast off these labels in order to then appreciate the cultures that each other person comes from. So anyway, that's just kind of where my mind has gone when I encounter the little bits of colorblindness in this book. But that's really the only, perhaps not the non-best practice philosophy that this book has in it, because otherwise this is a pretty relevant book to a lot of things that are going on today. And I think that this one in particular is, I think this is also a pretty strong advocate for why we need banned books, why we need to be teaching books that really do tackle difficult topics like rape, like child abuse, from sexual to physical to alcohol abuse to a lot of these things. Because when you can see yourself in literature, when you can see yourself in another person, you feel connected, and that's what helps you to heal and overcome the problems that you face. And Hannah Gadsby, the amazing Hannah Gadsby, says that she says, what I would have given to hear a story like mine. And I say this, I give you this story not for fame, not for profit, not for anything, but so that another person who has felt the same, who has experienced this same thing, can feel less alone. And I think that is what the real power behind this one is that it's just a really great way for people to connect and to feel less alone because of their experiences. So far, loving it. I am also making my way through Your Utopia by Bora Chung, translated by the iconic Anton Hur. I am not liking this as much as I liked Cursed Bunny. And I'm trying not to compare it too much because I think that the, like, framing is maybe a little different in this one. The horror element in this is a lot stronger, I will say. Not to the point of it being scary, but, like, it's just more, I guess, horrific in a lot of ways. And yeah, I don't know. The first one really was not great. The first story was not great. The second story had me really engaged, and then the ending really let me down. The third story was pretty cool and pretty interesting and reminded me a lot of something that, like, you'd find in a Shirley Jackson short story collection, or just like a story written by Shirley Jackson, and so I enjoyed that one. And so far the fourth one I'm finding decent. I don't know. This one is it's just as easy of a read as Cursed Bunny, and it's really easy to get through, but it's certainly not as engaging or as interesting as Cursed Bunny was. But I'm gonna finish it. I'm enjoying it enough. I'm enjoying it enough to finish reading it because, yeah, you know, it's like, you know, it's a good reading experience. It's not great. It's not bad. It's just not my favorite thing in the world, but I'm enjoying it enough to want to see where things go. So this is a solid mid-level experience. You know what I mean? It's one that's worth having. Okay. Last but not least is I mentioned that I went to see Karen Russell speak about The Antidote, and I went to go see her on Monday of this past week, and I was supposed to go with my in-person book club. My in-person book club bailed on me. If you guys are watching, now the internet knows your betrayal. But I still went, and I had a great time. I really, really respect Karen Russell. I think that... So the story that I read of hers was called Ghost Birds, and it's sort of a post-apocalyptic thing where it's this... There's two characters, and they go to see the ghost birds flying, basically, and it's a very interesting, introspective look at extinction and, like, just the world in sort of a post-human world. Not post-human as in we have merged with technology, but post-human as in human society has collapsed. We are no longer in the Anthropocene. We are post-Anthropocene. And I really, really liked that story. I think it was in the New Yorker. Yes, it was originally published in the New Yorker, but I read it in the best short stories of 2022, and which was edited by Andrew Sean Greer, which was just fantastic. Fantastic. Oh, no, did I do it again? Is it Sean Andrew Greer? See, I told you I have this problem. I told you I have this problem in a couple other couple videos ago that I always mix up his middle and his last name. I mean, you know, not to tell somebody how to live their life, but I really feel like he should have, like, just had his middle name be an initial. There's no reason to do two first names like that and then just, like, be really confusing to us all. So I'll put it down here what it actually is, but I can never, ever get it straight, which is probably the point, because he's not straight. So maybe he's doing it the right way. Anyway, The Antidote by Karen Russell is about a witch, basically, who collects people's unwanted memories that cause them pain, memories that cause them shame, and it happens very early on in the book, so this is not exactly a spoiler. I think it's also in the synopsis. She loses those memories and no longer has them, and So the way that Karen Russell described this is that it is the loss of regional memory, or the disappearance or the silencing of regional memory. She is in a town called Uz, which that is the official Karen Russell pronunciation. I would have thought Ooze, but it is Uz, Nebraska, and it's a fictional town. The overall thing takes place in the Dust Bowl, and it was quite funny because she was saying that so she was being interviewed by apparently one of her best friends from college, and like they both grew up in Florida. So Karen Russell obviously wrote Swamplandia, which also sounds like a really fascinating book, and I think I probably am going to pick that up pretty soon. She was joking in college that when she was an adult, she would write Drylandia. And that's kind of what this has become, because this is taking place in the Dust Bowl, very dry, very desolate. And I don't think, like, right now I'm going to really be able to summarize my thoughts on it, because they are, even though it happened 5 days ago, it's still, those thoughts and feelings are still quite fresh. I'm very, very excited to get into this because of everything that Russell talked about. She did say one thing that was kind of intriguing, and I think she acknowledged the fact that this very firmly is on the side, it recounts the side of the settlers while still having a fair amount of the indigenous perspective in it. While she was crafting this book, she interviewed a lot of indigenous people from the area, and she talked a lot about the loss and the theft of their land. The way that she sort of worked that into it is that this, in the same way that I think there is a section that is reminiscent of the boarding schools. Those function as a way of erasing memory and erasing cultural and regional memory, but she's dealing with that theme through the lens of a Polish person. So, as somebody who hasn't actually read the book, I can't actually tell you that much more, but from everything that she's talked about, it sounds really interesting. And I think, because I was also a little bit curious as to how she would deal with that, because obviously this is set in a period where the indigenous Americans are being very, very much cast aside, murdered, and having their land completely ripped out from underneath them. And I was going to be curious how she was going to handle that in this book, and it sounds like it's probably handled well. And I think she said that she recounted enough of the indigenous story that she could responsibly tell, and she, I believe, in the end directs you to a lot of resources where you can learn more, and she definitely highlighted those in the interview. But anyway, really excited. And she read a couple of pieces of it, and her interviewer also came up with a lot of lines that were just like really powerful and really well written. And I think, Karen Russell is a really good author, and I am excited, as I've said probably 4 or 5 times now, to read this. I don't know if I'm going to read it next, but I might. We'll see. TBD. So that is all I have for you today. I think this was kind of a rapid fire, well, not really, it's probably a fairly long video at this point, but a wrap up of the things that I've been reading over the last week. For now, that is all I have for you. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you again in another video. Bye.